Hey guys, so we are here in our final episode of our Heal Thyself series, and it's been a series.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey. We had to take a break because it was getting heavy. But today we're talking about a topic that I've been very excited and anticipating talking about because it's something that we've been hearing about a lot, especially like on social media and just in general, and I often don't know where the hell to start.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start here today with Beatrice. We have Beatrice, who is an expert on self-love, a lover of wellness, inner child healing coach, self-love coach too, and the host of Self-Love Fix podcast. Beatrice, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming with us today.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Yay. Beatrice, we gave a little quick rundown of what your expertise lies in, but tell our girls a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Yeah, so okay, I'm gonna make it short. But basically I consider myself to be a self-love coach. I'm also an astrologer. I think I do a lot of things, you guys. I do a lot of
Okay,
things.
good. We can get into signs too, because we like talking about signs.
Yeah, and I really just help people with limiting beliefs and overcoming them, specifically from childhood, because I found myself in a place in grad school where I had a lot of issues with perfectionism, a lot of issues with self-esteem and codependency. And I was really just wondering what is actually going on. I was on a completely different path. I became a dietitian, all that kind of stuff. And then along that path is when the stuff came up. And so as I overcame it or was overcoming a lot of things that were impeding me from my childhood, I came to a point where in my life, things were looking really, really good. Like I was feeling good in my body and I was not feeling so, maybe, I don't want to say oppressed as much as suppressed. And I was like, I have to help people. Like I can't just keep this to myself. So I started the Self-Love Fix podcast and then I started coaching because I was like, it can't just be me. There has to be other people. And being Black, I was like, there's got to be other Black people like this too.
Yeah.
We're here. Here I am, the other Black person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right
yeah.
here.
For sure. So.
Yeah, I don't hear a lot of, I hear it now. Like I hear more Black people talking about inner child work and nurturing their inner child. But growing up, you don't hear shit about no inner child. All it is a child needs to stay in the child's place, and then when you turn 18, all of a sudden you're grown, and it's like, hold on, wait a second, I've been a child standing in a child's place. Now you want me to hop up into an adult place, and I'm confused,
not capable,
and I'm shook. And a part of being confused and being shook is because once you become an adult and you start having these life experiences and you start going through things, you start to wonder, like you said, Beatrice, am I the only person who feels like this? Why are my relationships turning out like this? Why do I interact with other people like this? Why am I not achieving things that I want to achieve? And it all comes back to what happens in our childhood sometimes.
Yeah.
And so can you tell our listeners like what inner child work is for the people who may not know?
Yes, I can. And before I get into that, can I just say something? When I was in grad school, when I was going through this, by the way, I was listening to y'all's podcast. I was listening and I was like, I'm going to wait until we get on to tell them this. Yes, I was listening.
Oh my God.
Yes, because, and both of you talking about topics that people weren't talking about, or that I think maybe didn't have a voice in our community, made me feel like, oh my God, I really am on the right path. So it was very supportive for me a couple years. Yeah, and
full
still now.
circle moment. I love that. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's so cute.
Yes,
we're glad we were able to support you in your time of need.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I
sure.
still listen, so just wanted to say that. But going back to inner child, you said, what is inner child work?
Yeah, like can you just explain what that is to the listeners because some of them may not know?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with inner child work, it's really about integrating these parts of us that maybe were frozen in time, for lack of better words, when we were younger. I saw this on Twitter, somebody saying that trauma keeps us frozen at certain points in time. And it's so true. Like, there are adolescent parts of us, there are childhood parts of us, prepubescent parts of us that are like, had significant experiences that made us feel almost arrested, for lack of better words, arrested at that time, like arrested development. And so it's inner child work is about integrating these parts of us that we may be left behind because we didn't know and we didn't have the tools as adults, so that we can have healthier relationships and so that we could just feel better. Like, how many times do we just not feel good within ourselves unless this goes well, or we have this relationship, things like that?
Yeah.
All the time.
So how exactly do we get in touch with our inner child? Like, what are we doing? Because we've been seeing inner child work, and I'm doing the work, and I'm, getting back to my inner child all over social media. But some people are like, okay, where's mine? Where is it stored at? Because I need to call her up and get in touch with her.
Oh my God, that's a good question. And I think that our those aspects of ourselves, that inner child part of us, only really wants to come out when it feels safe, when they feel safe. You know what I mean? Because it's like, for so long, how many of us have been putting up walls or with other people, and in the same breath, we're doing that with ourselves. We're putting up walls, and we're like, I don't want to go there with you. And in the same breath, I don't want to go there with me. I don't want to get vulnerable with me. I don't want to touch on stuff that might be scary or might remind me of something I don't want to talk about. So it's the willingness to be vulnerable with yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's the part that's always hard for me, is the vulnerability with myself.
Yeah, I think that's the first step, because like, we expect people to be vulnerable with us, and the idea is that you're vulnerable with someone else because that creates intimacy and deeper relationships. But if we're not vulnerable with ourselves, it's like you're being fake with yourself while you're trying to forge this. Yeah, get deep with somebody else. Like, queen, self.
Start here.
Start with self.
Right.
You know, one thing about inner child work that I think is intimidating
Mm-hmm.
is that it's the removing the veil of what could have been like the perfect childhood, or what you thought was a good childhood. And I know that some people don't want to do work like that because they don't want to feel like their parents let them down. Like, it's kind of like, I don't even want to go into it and try to figure out what happened, because then that's gonna make me look at my parents differently. But how can somebody like work through those feelings? Because I guess in my understanding, I feel like hopefully there's a way that we can get to just the solution and not try to place blame on anyone, but just figure out how to do better, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's exactly it. It's like we're trying to, as we're seeing more of the human aspects of ourselves, like the shadows of ourselves. And I don't know, should I explain that term, shadow?
Yes,
Yeah,
please do.
we yeah, definitely, please.
Okay. Yeah. So the shadow aspects of ourselves are the parts of us that we push away. We don't want people to see, the parts we don't want to get vulnerable with because we think it's not normal or it's not acceptable. So we hide it. So those parts of us, like, the thing is, as we accept those parts of us, when we're talking about our parents and maybe what happened in our childhood, which I get you, like, it's like, I don't want to see my parents in that light. Well, the irony is, as we see and accept more parts of ourselves, we see and accept parts of them. Because I agree, I don't think this is a blame game. And I come from a background, or a lot of my clients are people who come from, and I don't know if I feel like y'all have touched on this term, like maybe more narcissistic parents, or I was like, I remember hearing some of this on the podcast.
The narcissist.
Yeah. So like, maybe parents who lean more on the side where they're not able to see their children, or not able to hold space for their experiences. And it's like, that's a different ball game. But with what you're saying about how, my relationship with my parents, like, I want to keep it and it's fine. But it's like, you can do both.
Yeah.
you can speak to the things that hurt you before, and you can understand that your parents are just human.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, that it's so hard. And speaking about parents, a lot of inner child work is reparenting or self-parenting your inner child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference there, or can you explain the difference between reparenting and self-parenting?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because I think it's almost similar, but I feel like with self-parenting, it's like you stepping in and holding your boundaries and you saying, this is how it's going to be for me. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to step up for myself in this moment
Mm-hmm.
and choose what I know to be good for me. And I think
Right.
reparenting is like, it has more to do with limiting beliefs, because that's
Yeah.
really what runs our worlds a lot of times, is what
Mm-hmm.
we learn. I mean, when we're kids, literally we're sponges. This is why kids can learn languages, when like 4, 5, 6 languages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They
when they're
pick up,
young.
Yeah.
yeah, when they're young, they pick up on everything, because it's like your brain has the capacity to absorb.
Yeah.
So reparenting, I think, is more like, what did I learn from my childhood that maybe it's not serving me and maybe I need to rewrite?
Redo.
And
Yeah.
When you're reparenting, you're redoing. That's
right.
what it sounds like to me. That's the best way that I can like think about it or remember it. To
Yeah.
reparent yourself is to maybe redo the things that didn't quite sit well with you, or that you can unlearn and figure out how to implement some healthier practices today.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the self-parenting would be like, I would think about it as like self-care and
Yeah.
things that you do just specifically for the self.
And that makes sense because, and it's so weird that this is like the way we're programmed and conditioned, because when we're being raised, what our parents say is law. So
Mm.
to have all of that for the duration of our childhood for at least 18 years, and then all of a sudden when you're an adult and you have this revelation like, that wasn't necessarily right, or I don't quite like that. No wonder why we be in our 30s struggling, because it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I kind of just got here and I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to be doing, because for so long I was told one thing, and it's not until now when I'm able to make my own decisions that I realize that this ain't really it, and it doesn't have to be this way.
Mhm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if that has to do with the way people parent, if maybe that should be adjusted, but there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack. And
Mm-hmm.
also what I read was that there's a way that you have to do inner child work, because sometimes you can cause yourself to go deeper into suffering or
Mm.
unveil something that you're not necessarily ready to handle. So, is there a proper way to do inner child work? Should it only be done with the assistance of a guide, a coach, a therapist, or can we just do this shit on our own and be
Yeah. Are
okay?
they just listening to this and starting it up? What we doing?
Yeah.
That's a good question. And I want to make it clear, I'm definitely not a therapist. I'm a coach. And so I think that, yeah, when we've gone through very traumatic stuff, it would probably be very helpful. I know there's lots of different therapeutic techniques specific to, psychotherapy and things like that, where it's a safer environment to explore trapped memories. But I think just from my own personal experience, and this is what I always tell my clients, is if you don't remember something, like I just want to say this too, if you don't remember something from your childhood, don't try to do it.
Beatrice, that's the part that scares me. Sometimes I think that I'm going to go deep and do some crazy work, and then some memory that I've suppressed is going to come up. That's really what keeps me apprehensive about really going deep with myself. I'm like, what if there's something that, bitch, I ain't trying to
I think
remember?
you think that it has to be something deep, and it can be something that's not really deep that you suppressed, but something that was very small that ended up affecting you in the long run.
I know. I just don't want it to be anything traumatic. I just cannot handle. Like, I cannot handle.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
no, I'm glad you said that, because it's like, this happened to me. So I have no problem saying what happened to me, because I don't want this to happen to anybody. I was so into this stuff. I was like, oh, I really want to learn. I really want to unlearn too. So
Yeah,
Right.
what ended up happening was I realized there was a lot of memories I couldn't access from my upbringing. And it made me upset, because I was like, I got into this thing where a big part of inner child work is validation, like validating yourself and being able to validate what you've gone through, because so many people say it's not that big of a deal, or what are you talking about? But if like the more traumatic I think your childhood, the more you're wanting validation to know you're not crazy, or things were really as they were. So what happened was, like, I was like, why can't I remember? I want to remember. I want to remember. And I was like almost trying to make these memories come back, and it kicked up my anxiety really bad. So, and it's because, and I ended up learning that your brain protects you from certain memories. Like, it'll block it out on purpose because it's too much for you to bear. But if you're just journaling or doing meditation or talking things out and things are coming up, that's telling you your body and your brain feel safe enough to let it out. So I hope I'm answering the question. It's like, whatever comes up, work with that. Don't try to pull stuff that is just not coming out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
it
that's
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's great advice too. Because, like I said, we'll be sitting here like, okay, so what the hell happened back then in '90, and trying to make it come back to us.
Something has to happen in '92,
so that we can work through it. And Beatrice, you just mentioned the difference between that you're not a therapist, you're a coach.
Yeah.
What is the difference between someone who is going to therapy to work through their inner child work versus obtaining coaching? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I would say coaching is more like guidance. Like, the type of coaching I do is just, I'm trying to be supportive and help you on your current path. It's like I'm helping you too with the tools that I've learned to get you to a goal, a place where you want to be. And I think with therapy, there's definitely all different types of therapy, but it's a different type of thing. Like, some therapists, you're just wanting to vent to, just express, get that stuff out. Some therapists, I know they do like cognitive behavioral therapy or other forms where they're actually helping you access these things. So for me, it's more like guidance, and it's more like a spiritual touch too. So it definitely looks different. And I know that some people do more than one. Like, my clients will do therapy because they want to fill their therapy bucket, and then they'll come to me. You see what I mean? Like,
yeah, doing it in tandem, like as a support of one another.
Yeah.
I need a coach.
So, Beatrice, what are some ways that you've done inner child work? Like, what are some ways that you've worked on inner child work with yourself, if you don't mind sharing? And we'll share some too, or some ways we can identify.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I feel like it never ends. Let's start there. Like, it just never ends. And that's the mistake that I made early on, is to think like, I do something and it's done. Like, no, it's just getting in a deeper and deeper relationship with yourself. And so for myself, I really would say, for me, the biggest thing has just been that shadow work I was talking about before. You know, where that thing where it's like, you think you're exempt. You don't do the thing that you point the finger at with everybody else. Like, you're like, I don't do this, but you do this.
Yeah, like, you annoy me. She annoys me because she is always out talking and doing the most. And it's like, maybe you have a desire to do that, or you do the most too.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So exactly. That's where I've done and continue to do a lot of the work, is taking a look at my stuff. Like, where might you be projecting or not? You know what I mean? You're missing something, for lack of better words. And I'd say perfectionism. Like, I've worked a lot with that. The perfectionism is so real. I think even just being, because I want to give like actual tangible examples, but being on a podcast, like, I don't know about both of you, but when I first started, I think I
shook.
Huh?
Were you shook?
Well, that, and I was reading word for word, like on a Word doc, what I was gonna say. Like, I was like, I can't mess this up. I have to make sure I don't so much as breathe too much on this mic. Like, you know what I mean?
Aww.
Yeah. So I was doing, it was a lot of like releasing this thing of perfectionism. Even just, I I don't even know how to, because I could spend all day and I won't going into this, but just like this thing of I have to come across a certain way all the time, or if I don't come across, if I don't showcase myself this way, then people are going to think this about me. Or like even just with this screen right now that you're seeing, it's like, oh, everything looks nice over here, but I'll tell you right over there.
It's a mess.
Right over there in that kitchen? No. But it's like I wouldn't have said these kinds of things before. I would have been so like, oh, people are going to think I'm not professional. People are going to think I'm not together. Well, this is the real. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
I've definitely identified some inner child work that I can do around perfectionism as well. And I think it stems from not an expectation being set on me to be like perfect, but I feel like it's something that comes with being the older sibling. It's like you're a parent before you're a fucking parent. You have to be so responsible. You're doing things ahead of your time. You really are. Like, make sure your sibling do this, and if they don't, then you looking at me like I pushed them out.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely an area that I can reparent or do some inner child work in order to be better as an adult, because perfectionism is not possible. And I know there's a hell of a lot more that I need to do the work to identify. Jeremy and I actually had an episode about shadow work on our Patreon, and that's where we need to do the shadow work. We identified a mini laundry list of our shadows. we did, and so that's definitely some areas where I can do some definite inner child work.
I think perception, I'm always concerned about people's perception of me. You know what's really sad? It's very, very sad. Yesterday, my neighbors have a dog. His name is Owen. He's a golden retriever. I went to touch Owen and I accidentally stuck him in the eye. It was not like a but like how you just reach in and I tapped him in his eye and he turned around and walked away, and I was like, what the fuck is Owen thinking of me now? It's that.
Dead.
I was like, oh my God, he's probably like, this bitch is not a friend. She just hurt me. But I do that all the time. But like my brain runs crazy about the way people are perceiving me. Yeah. And I don't know if it has to do with childhood, being the older sibling for sure. Like my mom always perceiving me as like the good child, right? Because it's just my sister and I had the good grades. Of course, we were doing the latchkey thing. So once we're leaving school, I'm making sure everybody's safe, making sure my sister, I think you just automatically take on the role of second parent once your parent's not around. It's like everything that I say goes, and mom's going to be looking at me crazy if something happens here. Right. Like make sure everything's tidy before she comes in. It's just all of that. So I do feel like I've been a parent before I was a parent. And I think that has a lot to do with perception and just wanting to always be perceived well from people, and it's just triggering. Yeah. I hate it.
Yeah. It's a lot.
I have work to do.
So we talk about like relationships a lot on here. That's one of the main things. Well, you said you listen. So but so how can our like childhood trauma in this work that we have to do manifest in our platonic relationships, our romantic relationships, work relationships?
All relationships.
All of them.
Yeah.
I know how it manifests.
Oh my God. It can manifest.
How?
I'll tell after.
Okay.
Go ahead, Beatrice.
It can manifest in so many different ways. And I think it's interesting. You were talking about romantic relationships. And I know you mentioned the other ones too, but I think romantic relationships is where it really hits different. Like it all comes out because of the proximity and the intimacy. It's like the closer you get to someone else, the more you see yourself. That's really what's happening. Like you're seeing yourself more and more. And so that's where it really comes out. And I think also with, I guess let's start with platonic relationships or friendships. So with friendships, a lot of times that abandonment stuff can come out where it's like, I don't know about you, and I don't think it's as common as we get older, but sometimes it still happens where we do this thing where it's like, okay, do my friends really, really support me? If they supported me, they would do X, Y, and Z. Oh, I haven't heard from them in this amount of time. That must mean they don't really support me. And we find evidence for what it is that we actually believe. Does that make sense? It's like Yeah, maybe we are feeling some kind of abandonment from something that happened that was unresolved. And so we look now for things to confirm said abandonment and don't even realize it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, that you've left me alone here in the dark.
Yeah. And so
I resonate with that.
And I think that we even do this thing too with friendships where it's like, oh, okay, you didn't do this, like tit for tat. I don't know. That sounds like that's a real old phrase, but I think
We used to use those
what was it?
old phrases. We use old phrases here a lot.
Okay, so it's like you're seeing what they do or what they don't do, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this because you did this, or I'm not gonna do this because you didn't do this. And we start playing out these dynamics with people. Like when we were younger, it's like we're at the end of the day, we're trying to avoid being hurt.
Yeah.
We're trying to avoid pain, and we're trying to beat someone else to the punch. Like, you're not gonna hurt me first. I won't have it.
Period.
Yeah. And then with romantic relationships, actually, I think I want to save that one for last. The work relationships.
Yeah, let's save it.
Yeah, I'm going to save it. With the work relationships, and by the way, there's plenty other things with friendships, but that's just what came to mind. With the work relationships, that's when I see a lot of the perfectionism, or even like what you said about the siblings playing that older role coming out, where it's like you're now bossing your coworkers around, that kind of energy. Like, I'm sure you've had that with coworkers.
Yeah, like, you're not the boss here, girl. Go sit down in your cubicle and stop.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds like you're a coworker for sure. Sounds like her. She's dealing with something.
Yeah, I'm like, queen, stay in your place.
Right. It's that thing, or you'll have that coworker, that double, triple check coworker who is like, okay, well, I saw that you didn't do this or you did that. And unsolicited advice we might be giving or receiving from other coworkers. It's this thing of like, I'm trying to get a need met here. I'm trying, and with that example, it's like that coworker might be feeling good about themselves when they are leading, or when somebody else, when they can correct someone else. That's how they get their need of I'm important met. Yeah. It's like we're all just trying to, and that's the big part of shadow work, is like we're all just trying to get our needs met. We usually have good motives. But
that makes a lot of sense.
It comes out in odd ways.
And then the romantic.
We're
waiting.
We're hanging on your every word.
Tell us what to do, what we're doing.
So with trauma, oh my God, trauma and how it plays out in romantic relationships. I feel like the question is, how does it not? How does it not play out? Because I think that it doesn't matter if you've been through significant, like whether, for example, if you've had a narcissistic parent, or you are just a really codependent person, or whatever kind of dynamics you had in childhood. Everybody's stuff comes out in romantic relationships. And I think you've had an episode before. I told you guys, I listened. You had an episode way back about like attachment styles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. We had it.
Right. And that's where it really comes out. It's like, especially with the anxious attachment, where it's like, I need somebody to soothe me. I need somebody to soothe me. I need somebody to make sure I'm okay. And so now what are we doing? You didn't text me back in 30 minutes. What's going on? I'm freaking out.
That's me.
Yeah.
I need a quick response, or else I'm like, okay, so what's going on?
Right? It's like, I just need to know you're there. Or like with the avoidant, some people might lean avoidant, where it's like, I actually can handle this all on my own. I don't really need to get vulnerable. I don't really want to. And that comes from this idea of like, when you grew up, you had to be self-reliant. Nobody was really there to soothe you, so you learned how to soothe yourself.
Yeah.
So that plays out. Yeah. And so, well, you guys already had an episode on that. So, but it's like those types of things.
It comes back around. It's like everything is just
intertwined.
Intertwined.
The childhood trauma, the relationships, all of this stuff ends up just working together, sickly.
But the thing is, it all starts from childhood. So that's why we have to do the inner child work.
Right.
So that ultimately we can heal. But it's like, damn, who has time? I'm trying to do the adult work. Now I got to do the child work too. Come on now.
I know, it's tough. It's like, dang, can I breathe? Can I just live? And I think, okay, I kind of want to touch on something speaking about romantic relationships. I mean, it might be a little bit, no, I want to do it. I want to do it because this is the Black girl bravado. And I feel like,
Yes. This is it.
Yeah. And I feel like specific to our community, there's a lot of maybe limiting beliefs that we have around our own experiences about romantic relationships. Like, I know one way things were really jumping out for me. This was back in, I think, college and high school. And you know how we get that thing, we say that thing where it's like, I don't know if I won't say the word, but I'll say men ain't shit. I don't know if I could, say the
Niggas ain't
Niggas
shit.
is what
It can
you
be
wanted to
said.
say.
I don't know if I can I say
Let
that?
it rip.
Niggas.
I can
Yes,
Niggas
of
ain't
course.
shit.
Yeah,
This is
so
our
we
shit.
we grow up, it's like niggas ain't shit. Like how many times do we say that? And it's like, the truth is we really did experience or saw somebody experience things that were just not cool and things we don't want to experience in relationships. But then what happens is we end up telling ourselves that story and saying it. And then it's like what I was saying before, looking for the evidence, looking for more of it, seeing
Yes.
more of it. And then it's like, a lot of the times it's our unhealed dynamics that played out. Don't get me wrong. We had terrible experiences. And
Right.
huh?
I said right. You did.
Yeah. And also, I know, okay, I can't speak to everybody's experiences, but I'll speak to mine. I was saying stuff like that. And I remember not vocalizing, especially in college, not vocalizing what I wanted or needed out of relationships and not saying anything because I didn't learn how to speak up and use my voice. And then I found that those same men that I would say stuff about, it's like they were actually kind of honest about what they wanted. And I was really kind of not. And that's like the hard thing to do, is to be like, well, I never actually, well,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying?
Child.
Yeah.
No, I know. And that's why at this age, I've made it a point to say what I want. It'd be hard, but I said, you know what? If you don't say it, then you're just taking whatever you get. And then in the end, you can't blame anyone but yourself. So I'm like, let me just make it clear what the type of time I'm on. And then if you're on the same type of time, cool, we can continue moving forward. And if not, then we can't. It has to end here. And I think that we don't want to do that because we're setting ourselves up to potentially be rejected. And rejection can be a part of our inner child work too. Like maybe you felt rejected as a child. And so as an adult, you don't want to subject yourself to rejection because the shit fucking sucks. But at the same time, you don't want to be in misalignment with someone because you're scared to say how you feel and you think that they may feel another way. So you just got to say it.
You just
Yeah,
got
and in addition to the rejection, we be afraid they're going to leave.
That's rejection, them leaving.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, because the thing is, if somebody says, okay, for instance, if you're like, you know what? I want to exclusively date. If you're dating somebody and you're like, you know what, at this point, I want to exclusively date. I don't want to date anybody else. Sometimes we just make an assumption, especially if you're someone like me. Automatically, when I start dating someone, because I'm a one type of nigga mommy, especially with my time and my energy, it's like you're the only person I'm dating. So you like assume you're spending so much time with this person. We're always together. We must be exclusively dating. Time goes on.
Find out you're not the only one.
You find out you're not the only one, and it's like, let me just tell you right now, I want to exclusively date. Do you agree to those terms? If yes, cool, we can keep going on. If not, then we don't need to date anymore because I want to exclusively date. I'm only dating you. I don't have time to be having shit swapping. So let's just not. But in the past, I would have just made an assumption that we must be exclusively dating. And I realize now that you have to have clear conversations with people for clarity and making sure you're not getting played like a fiddle. Now, someone may still play you like a fiddle, but at that point, you cut them off because they lied.
Yeah.
Now you're a liar.
Now you're a fucking liar.
So in addition to the rejection and then potentially leaving, is that you end up settling for what you don't even want just to keep them there.
Like if you want exclusivity and they're like, I'm not really on that type of time.
Then you agree to not
and you're
be
like,
exclusive.
Exactly.
And
you're like, okay.
well, it'll happen when it happens, or I don't want to put a label on it, or we're just being free with one
Wow.
another or doing what we're doing. I mean, I've been there. I've been
Right.
Y'all
there all too
been
many
there.
times. And that goes back to my inner child work that needs to be done around abandonment and my shadow work and,
Same.
you know, my childhood. And I spoke about this on our show about like my dad not being around. All of that stuff comes right back around and not wanting to be alone. I have an anxious attachment style. I'd be like, let me know that you're here.
Mhm.
Let me know that you're here with me. And it all just goes back to like needing to do the work and also creating like these cycles of like self-sabotage, like putting ourselves in these positions that,
God.
you know, where we
Yeah.
end up ruining things for ourselves instead of healing. So like how does, now that we're talking about self-sabotage, how do these cycles of self-sabotage show up from our like inner child work that needs to be done, our childhood trauma?
Oh my God, yes.
We done talked about a whole bunch of shit in this
Brought
segment.
it around.
It's like, yeah, and it's like the same question. It's like, how does it not? Because it's like what you were just talking about with the relationships and how it's like, okay, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna assume because we're talking that this is just an exclusive thing. That's a great example of self-sabotage. It's like, but here's the thing, it's not like we're intentionally trying to sabotage ourselves. And that's why the phrase, I feel like, well, it's hard to, what other phrase can we really use? That's like one of the best
Yeah.
ways to say it. But it's not like we're intentionally doing this. When I think of that particular situation, because I did the same thing. I did the same thing all the time.
I think every woman has done
We
this
all
one.
have. Every woman. I'm every woman.
Yeah.
We all have.
We've done it.
And it's like my thinking, and I'm not sure about yours because it might be slightly different, but my thinking behind it was I'm afraid to, well, yeah, actually, I think you did mention it, the abandonment. I'm afraid to be left alone, basically. Like if I say what I want, if I say my desire, I'm afraid I'm not going to have any options here. And we tie our desires or our needs to certain people. And I think that's where where things get really sticky, for lack of better words, is when we say it's got to come from here. It's kind of like, I think of with trauma and abandonment, we learn scarcity. I think in just being Black, we learn scarcity already, but
Right.
add the layers to it, like we learn scarcity. It's like, I have to take what I can get. I got to make lemonade out of rotten lemons, basically.
The rotten.
The rotten.
It ain't even, I was about to say Beyonce, but that ain't even what she had. The rotten.
The
lemons,
rotten
child.
lemon.
My
It's
God.
like these lemons aren't even doing anything for me, but let me try and squeeze it all out. Let me try to get what I can from it. And so the sabotage that's really what it is. I think it's rooted in scarcity. It's like, I have to make do with what I have. There aren't any other possibilities. So I think just on a wider scale with inner child work, it's like, at the root of it, we have desires. Like maybe we have a desire to express a boundary. We have a desire to be in a relationship, a better relationship for ourselves. We have a desire to have friends that are better for ourselves, whatever it is. But we stay in the places that aren't serving us because of the beliefs that we have. Like we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have these belief systems. They run deep. I think beliefs is really where the inner child work lies, is working through that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It makes a hell of a lot of sense.
It's our limited beliefs and our scarcity mindset. All of this shit. See, everything comes back down to
And our lack of self-worth.
our
It definitely is a scarcity. It's scary. You really hit the nail on the head when you said scarcity, because we do just feel like we have to make whatever's in front of us work, and we do abandon ourselves and we do sabotage ourselves, because that's when you start bending. That's when you start settling. That's when you're like, I mean, well, it's not that bad. I just guess
Right.
we could wait. I guess we can do the situationship thing. I mean, at least I got a nigga.
yeah, somebody to lay up with.
Yeah. So
It'd be that in the
Right.
cold months.
the winter months.
In the winter months, you
For the
just
hot
want
girl summer, it's cool. It's lit. But in the winter months,
get under me.
yeah, I'll lay up with you.
Get under
I'll
me.
lay up with
Yeah, in the winter, it really gets like, well, what options do I have? But it's like, I think that's where we really, I mean, the winter, things are really getting scarce in the winter, but I feel like, oh my God, with the scarcity, it's like, that's what we're used to operating under. We're just used to not looking outside of how things are. That's really what it is. When you think about what you've learned in childhood, whether your parents meant to or they didn't mean to, they might have introduced you to paradigms and belief systems that keep you small. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, it's just what they knew. They didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like they're purposely trying to, you know what I mean? It's just they don't know any better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but then these things might be keeping us small, and it's all rooted too in safety. What do I know to be safe? For some people, we see this like, okay, in relationships, whether it's abusive emotionally or physically, this is safety to me. That's safety.
Yeah.
Safety, why? Not real literal safety that we know as adults. Safety as in this is familiar,
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
comfortable.
And we stay in some shit with a nigga just because we comfortable, child. Because I done been there and I did a bid.
I did a
a
bid
10-year
too.
bid with him, and it was just because it was comfortable. It was like, oh, this is familiar. I know it. And also thinking about like, dang, what are my other options?
Because you
Right.
can't see the other options
You
when you're in
can't.
some stuff. It's like the
Mhm.
options, you're Ray Charles, Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder to the options.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to have hope.
It's on
And
the
you
other
have to have
side.
faith that there are options out there, but you're never going to be able to assess the options if you're stuck in a place that you don't need to be.
Right.
So, like, what are the steps? What is the process? Where do we start when we want to begin doing this healing?
Yeah.
Please tell
How
us.
do we heal?
How do we? Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of different ways you can take it. And this might sound a little bit like, really? That's how I would start. But this is how I started. I actually started with, I know, just bear with me, but gratitude actually. I started with gratitude. And why did I start with gratitude? At the time, I didn't know. I just heard people saying this, like, start finding things to be grateful for and start finding things to appreciate about your current life. And I was like, this is so backwards. Like, let's focus on what I don't like right now. But
Right.
it's like, what is this going to do for me? But what I found was when I started to find things to be grateful for or find things to appreciate about how things are as they are, it forced my brain to start to expand and to start to get abundant. Because remember what I was saying about scarcity? Like, we make a lot of our decisions and we do a lot of things that we don't even really want to do, but we just do it because that's all we know, and we're stuck in the scarcity. So if we can just start to feel better, I think people undermine how important it is to feel good in your body. I really think that. I think we're taught, again, I don't think it's on purpose. I just think that, how we learn to go to school for 8 hours a day, even though we might not feel like it. How did we do that, by the way? Like,
I don't know. I'm questioning the same.
I'm questioning it with work as well.
That's what I was about to bring it around. How the fuck am I going to work every day when I don't feel like it?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
just the getting up and going. I hate it.
Right. It's like a lot of things we're just used to being not feeling good or being irritated or being like all these, not that it's bad to feel these things. I'm just saying we're used to not feeling good. And so, and even from childhood, trauma is literally living in a state of fear, a state of panic, a state of I need to get my bare minimum met. So it's like, how can we start to integrate the fact that we deserve to feel good, the fact that we deserve to experience some joy? Are we going to be in joy 24/7? No, that would be a little concerning. But it would be a little concerning because we're human, right? But it's like we undermine that. So I think gratitude is a great place to start, a quick and easy place. I think things that allow you to observe yourself, like whether it's actual meditations, like guided or non-guided, or just taking a walk where you're just observing things, it allows you to scale back from this thing of I have to be thinking all the time and I have to be having my mind everywhere but right here. Yeah.
I like that. I like it.
I think another small thing is learning how to trust yourself and really listen to your instincts and intuition, because sometimes when we're beginning on this journey of inner child work, some things may pop up and you might be like, am I tripping? Like, is that really something? Or is this really a big deal? Or am I doing too much? But I feel like if it pops up, it's something that needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And with our intuition in general, if you're feeling something, feel it and acknowledge that too, because we try to like silence that. And then as time goes on, it comes around on the back end and we're like, I knew I wasn't fucking tripping.
Right.
So like when it comes to trusting yourself, so that like when things pop up about yourself, but also about other people, we need to act on that. And I guess a good part, a part of that too is like, I think it might take some time, because sometimes when you are anxious or you have dealt with trauma, sometimes that can cloud your vision and you may mistake those things as like intuition, when it's really like you just being anxious and reacting from that space. But once we do all of the work, then I think our intuition and our trust for ourselves will grow stronger and we can really flex that
Move in
muscle.
power.
Yeah.
Move in power. I'd say just getting a little more comfortable acknowledging our inner child. When we had a Sheena from Black Girls Heal on the podcast, we were having some emotional moments, and she was encouraging us that when you're feeling those moments, identify it, acknowledge it, and even like journal to that little girl who's inside of all of us. And I think bring awareness to what they need at that moment.
Yeah.
So not being afraid to say, I'm feeling scared, or I'm feeling really good. This feels good to me right now.
Yeah.
And learning how to lean into providing more joy, or doing things that bring you joy, or leaning into, this is uncomfortable. Why do I feel this way? So acknowledging when it shows up and then trying to create some action around it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is what I say.
Another thing that I read is about how sometimes we have to grieve the parents that we didn't have, because sometimes we're so stuck on what someone didn't do for us as a parent, and it keeps us in these cycles. But we have to grieve, like, you know what, you didn't show up for me how I needed you to, but now it's my turn to show up for myself. So if you needed compliments and you needed validation, that's where the affirmations come in. That's where you start affirming yourself and giving yourself the validation, because unfortunately you may never get it from your parent. Maybe they're not tapped in, maybe they're not receptive, maybe they're gone. And so there's no need to like drag out suffering because we're waiting on somebody else to do something that they should have done, but unfortunately they didn't do it. So
Yeah.
And be comfortable setting some boundaries with their asses.
yeah.
Set boundaries with your family members, if that's your parents who don't, who you're like, who at my door? Who didn't do what they needed to do. Just,
You want to
it's
stop
okay.
it? We can stop it.
I'm sorry about that, y'all. No, but keep going.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
yeah, I just think like setting boundaries and being firm with the boundaries that you set, the boundary that you set that will keep you whole. Because sometimes we do the work and then we allow the people who didn't do what they were supposed to do
Bring us back.
Okay.
Yeah.
The shackles be on our feet. It's like, once you do the work and you are moving forward in power, set the boundary so that no one can come in and undo what you're doing. That's this being caught in those bad cycles.
I agree.
Set some boundaries so you don't have to go down that sick road.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I would be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beatrice, tell our girls about the work that you're doing, more work in your community, and where they can find you.
Yes.
Okay, so you can find me over at the Self Love Fix on Instagram, and then again, I have my own podcast, the Self Love Fix podcast, and I'm currently running a program called Self Love Over Codependency. And actually, Brittany, what you were saying about the grief work, that's something that we're doing in a module I'm releasing, but. So unfortunately, that's already closed. But if you follow me over on the podcast or on my social, you'll hear more about it. But it's so true, like that grief work, so important to bring to light what's hidden about how we feel, how we felt with our parents. And I think that I'm just out here trying to help people with their limiting beliefs and move from this scarcity and this like, oh, my desires don't matter, to like, oh, I'm worthy of my desires. I'm worthy of being fully, deeply, transformatively in love with all aspects of myself, not just the things that look good on paper. Yeah. And
I love it.
I love that for us.
Yeah.
We are thriving over surviving over here.
Yes.
This has been a great series. Beatrice, thank you so much for your contribution to the series, closing it out with a bang and taking time out of your busy schedule to chit chat with us. We really appreciate it.
We do. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's
Yes.
valuable and necessary.
Yes.
And it's the way that we're all heading to the top.
Yes.
Yes.
All the girls together everywhere.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
This has been good.
I loved this.
Yeah.